Hi, I'm Pastor Bill Vigue of Meat of the Word Ministries. I want to talk to you today, or the thought that I have in my heart today is, let not the church be charged. Yesterday I was sharing a little bit about the Apostle Paul writing to Timothy and said, "O man of God, flee these things." And then the two things he was specifically talking about was the love of money and the sense of entitlement that's going on. And then I talked a little bit about the widows and how the church has a responsibility to take care of widows, or widows indeed. And the Apostle Paul gave us some specific guidelines of who to accept, of who would truly be widows indeed, who the church should provide for, and those that they should not. And then he makes this comment, and I read this the other day, verse 16, 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 16. If any man or woman that believeth have widows, let them relieve them, and let not the church be charged, that it may relieve them that are widows indeed. Notice the phrase, let not the church be charged. The Apostle Paul was a tremendous businessman. We need to understand, I always emphasize his spiritual side and his spiritual duties and the spiritual things, the deep, powerful things that he did. But we also need to understand that he dealt with practical things here. He talked about, robbing other churches because the church in Corinth wasn't supporting him at that time, and he was taken from other churches so that he could minister in Corinth and things of that nature. He was a good businessman. He understood the importance of distributing to the needy people that were there. He understood about tithing and offerings and all of those things, about giving and why it is so important to support the work of God. But there are some people that deserve our support, and there are other people that are living in an entitlement mentality that don't deserve the support. They should get up and be active. Now, as we're coming closer and closer to the Lord's return, America is going to find, and when I say these things, I realize in America we have a lot of people that are struggling and on welfare. A lot of people are abusing welfare. They could be working, but they won't work because they're getting so much money. I went through it when I was a young man. I had lost my job and I went on unemployment, and I was making, I forget what it was at the time, a couple $100. It was enough for me to pay my rent and my gas and do everything. So I lost all ambition to work. I just stayed there. I wasn't a Christian, but I just stayed there and drank all day and just took it real easy because I had something. I didn't have to work to get it. One day, quickly, I learned this was the wrong thing to do, and I vowed that I would never take another day of unemployment. And folks, there's a lot of people that are depending on unemployment and welfare and entitlements and things of this nature in America, that soon those things are not going to be here. This country is being bankrupt. It's time for us to learn how to fight the good fight of faith and do the good works so that the church is not going to be burdened with it. Now, I want to quickly just tell you one story about my dad. My mother told me this, I think, heard it, right after my dad had passed away. My mother, my uncle, somebody had told me this story. But my dad, back in the 50s, I was just a little boy. My dad made about $60 a week. He was a woodsman. He would clear out, cut down trees and clear out the land, take away all the trees and burn them and everything for companies like IBM, where they wanted to build their corporation buildings and things of that nature. That was his livelihood. He didn't make very much money. He was a poor, uneducated man. Well, he was making about $60 a week when all of a sudden his father, his daddy in Maine, fell ill and had to go into a retirement home. Things were difficult for all of the family, and it was costing $50 a week for this retirement home. And my grandfather was there. I was just a baby, 2 years old, so it was probably about somewhere between 56, 54, or something like that. I guess it was 56, 57. But for a couple months, my dad was the only one in the family that could or would support his dad and he was making $60 a week, and he would give $50 of that each week to help pay for that retirement home, because his brothers and sisters couldn't help out. They didn't have the money to do it. But he did it. Now, my mother, I remember telling me the story of that one particular Christmas, how she cried her eyes out because, and my sister and I were just babies at the time, but she just cried because the only thing she had for Christmas for us was going to the 5 and 10 store and buy a few nickel and dime toys for us to play with, little things on the floor and stuff like that. And she cried and cried and vowed she'd never have us go through a Christmas like that again. We weren't any worse for the wear of what we went through. But the point I'm trying to make out is my dad had an instinct on the inside that he was to relieve the suffering. It was his turn to take and care for his daddy. And folks, we do need to understand that. Let's not just turn our children away and tell them, or our parents away. Let's learn how important it is for us to take our place and help those that we love and have loved us over the years. Let's relieve the suffering and take our own responsibilities so the church and the government is not going to have to be doing it. All right? It's an important message. I think it's on practical terms that we need to understand how important it is for us to buck up and take our place in the ranks of life. Have a great day. God bless.